This is the multiple award-winning GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine. Our content is aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything, from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 271 of the GardenDC podcast. In this episode, we talk with Peggy Singelman, host of Virginia Homegrown, all about disguising the ugly features of our landscapes. The plant profile is on Star Anise Alyssum, and we share what's going on in the garden as well as some upcoming local gardening events in the What's New segment. We close out with the last word on being a serial seedling killer from Christy Page of Green Prints. I was visiting gardens in Raleigh, North Carolina a few years ago when I saw the most clever disguise for an unsightly jumble of utility poles and wires. Be sure to listen to the end of the episode to learn more about that. This episode, we're joined by returning guest Peggy Singelman, host of Virginia Homegrown. She's returning to the podcast to talk all about disguising those ugly landscape features and maybe things that are a little bit of eyesores in our own garden. Welcome back, Peggy.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Great to be here again.
So we last had you on talking about spring pruning tips, and then a little bit before that about how to treat rainwater in our landscape. And so that was about spring 2025. In the past year, has anything new happened in your life? Any big updates?
It's been a great year. Really have enjoyed it. I've just been busy as all get out with speaking engagements and consulting because I love to help others in their gardens. And on the show, Virginia Homegrown, we had a great season, really wonderful guests and good topics. And right now we're in the throes of planning season 26. Looking forward to connecting with folks and getting back out in the garden with everybody via TV. So it's good times.
Wow. Congratulations on 26 season. Remind our listeners how they can watch Virginia Homegrown, especially if they're not in Virginia.
Well, we stream on Roku and we're on Facebook as well as YouTube. Of course, we have a Facebook account, but we're on YouTube as well. So you can stream us anywhere, from your device or from your computer. Of course, it's Virginia Homegrown with VPM, part of PBS, and Virginia Public Media. I'm excited to say we're on every Saturday morning. If you're in the Virginia area, you can watch us about 8 o'clock in the morning. We've got a really strong following all throughout. We're actually streamed in all 50 states now. The joke is we're still not in Guam. Nobody in Guam is watching us, so I think I have to go there. So we're excited about the popularity of the show. And yes, you can pick it up anywhere. YouTube, Roku, and also always on the Virginia Homegrown website on vpm.org/VHG. You can catch every show there, as well as our newsletter articles, which I always encourage everybody to sign up for.
Great. Well, if there's a podcast listener out there in Guam, let Peggy know.
Yes.
And I was going to say that if you are in Virginia, so that's your local PBS station that you would look for it.
Yes.
And obviously most of the topics are Virginia-centric and about a lot of edible gardening, but also other kinds of gardening.
Yeah, we're actually more mid-Atlantic. I'm a Zone 7 gardener, but I grew up in Zone 6 and also in Zone 5. So we cover a broad variety of, I'll say, experiences that gardeners can share. And we also are very into sustainability and being eco-friendly, teaching people how to manage their gardens in a way that's different than many of us were brought up to be or new to them as they enter into the world of gardening. We really work hard at covering every topic conceivable. And we're always open to new ideas as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of overlap with the GardenDC podcast. So
Yep.
Just can't get enough.
Nope, it's too fun.
Well, so we asked you back on to talk about stuff to hide is what we're going to say. So these are things that we want to screen out that are maybe a little bit unsightly. And so let's talk about some of those examples in our landscape of little eyesores.
Yes, particularly this time of year, which is more of a winter time of year. We don't have as many leaves on the trees to hide things. And I'm going to say right now, out my window, I'm looking at my trailer, my neighbor's utility trailer, and my another neighbor's trash cans and recycling containers. And I love those people. They're wonderful. But, I'd like to manage my view shed a little more than, what I'm seeing right now. And other people, have similar situations, and propane tanks can be there as well. But it seems this time of year, simple things like even, utility boxes that, we don't think are too innocuous, but here they are just glaring. And I think all of us has a shed story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let's start with that trash can and recycling area. And Peggy, I got put on with the couple blocks around me a program as a trial for our county of commingling food and landscape waste. So that's a great thing. But along with that came 4 new huge bins in multiple colors. And I have nowhere in my small little backyard to put them. So they're all sitting like on the edge of my driveway, lined up like, I was going to say unattractive little soldiers. But they are the biggest eyesore for me right now. What advice do you have?
Well, that's a narrow space that you have there, I'm assuming, because it's, those containers are very large and they're just so unsightly. And so you can pick out some plants that are going to stay kind of low, below 8 feet, and you want them to stay narrow as well. So you can start off with simple native grasses. That's a really easy, inexpensive, quick fix to this. It'll grow quickly too. And our native grasses can be just as simple as our switchgrasses, our panicums, and thundercloud grows to 8 feet. I really like that one. But also our Indian grass, our sergastrum, which grows to about 7 feet tall. And I've grown these in zone 6 and zone 7 and zone 5, and they're so easy and they're great. But another thing is you can think about is creating, using a fence and then growing plants on that fence. You can do it with vertical slats or lattice type or picket or louver, whatever style you want. You just have to make sure air can flow through it so the space doesn't become a dead air space in the heat of the summer. But I love covering fences. Don't you, Kathy? Just covering them.
Definitely. Nearby to those bins, I had already started clematis going up. I think it's Polish Sprite.
Right.
And climbing rose. And I'm trying to remember, it's a David Austin rose. It's named after a flautist. It's going to come to me. James Galway. There you go. There we go. It came to me. So those two, I'm trying to train up the fence to combine with each other. And then meanwhile, these bins are like, yes, the fact that I have to constantly access them, to load things in and then pull them out to the curb once a week makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I'm thinking of a type of fence section maybe to kind of box them off. So I was thinking more of a, just like building something nice to obscure them with a screen, a lattice. But I think your idea of putting a plant up that lattice or screening is a great idea.
Yeah, and think about our native plants and our native evergreens. I mean, your choices are beautiful, but then again, we want it to be evergreen. So our coral honeysuckle, our Liniceras sempervirens, and major wheeler's my fave because it only gets to be about 8 to 10 feet tall. But other people like John Clayton because it's yellow and it gets to be about 15 feet. But other things that you can do very easily in zone 7 here is our crossvine, our bignonia, another native evergreen, and beautiful orange flowers. It grows to be 30 feet, but you can weave it through any fence to take up that 30 feet. You don't think 30 feet high. And then, yes. And then people always forget about until it blooms and then it's gone is our yellow flowering Carolina jasmine, our Gelsemium.
Yeah, that's one I have near HVAC unit, but I have to kind of make sure every month or so to walk around the unit to make sure that vine hasn't crept over because I have a little trellis in front of it as a screen with that Carolina jasmine woven through it. But I also want to make sure there's enough airflow.
Yeah.
Our HVAC units, I'm not sure about propane tanks needing airflow around them, but certainly the air condensers do.
Yes. And you're a clematis fan. I heard that in you. So think also about Clematis armandii. I mean, our evergreen clematis. It was
Oh,
all the
yeah.
rage. It is not native. I repeat, not native. But still, it can serve the purpose of blocking unsightly features too. Friend of mine grew it to hide a Volkswagen.
That is, and it is a solid green and stays a beautiful deep, deep green. I'm
Yes.
familiar with that one. I've seen it climbing up a tall tree just as a beautiful ornamental vine, just not for use for screening in that instance.
Yeah.
And so if that can do that, I was also thinking about another non-native vine, which is our climbing hydrangea.
Yep.
Not a real hydrangea, I don't think, Peggy, but
Nope, it's
just
not.
given that a common name. However, it's such a slow grower, Peggy.
It
That's where you're
creeps.
like, wish to, because it would make such a great screen. But I feel like maybe do some annual vines while you're waiting for that climbing hydrangea.
Truly, truly. And thinking of annuals, don't forget containers. I hide my HVAC system with huge containers and I can trade them up every year. I put shrubs in some that I'm going to eventually move to my garden, but I buy them kind of small at the garden center and I pop them in those big containers and nurture them through the first season, get them really big and robust before I plant them in the fall out into the garden. But I also have an opportunity for screening that HVAC with flowers and shrubs that have been added to my collection. So I mean, don't just think about, well, I don't have time to weed, I don't have time, I don't have, I can't dig in my soil, it's too hard, or I've got maybe asphalt in front of me or part of my parking area. Containers can really add a nice punch. And if you get them large enough, you don't have to babysit them as much.
That's such a great solution, Peggy, because containers can move. So when that repairman or whoever needs access can get in there, so that's great. You can put them on wheels.
Yes.
And so you can wheel them in and out. And then the size is a great idea. You can have different options. And when they're, when you're inside mostly for the wintertime, it doesn't matter if the annuals have died back.
Right. It doesn't. The other thing too, though, is due to our heat, our summers are just getting so hot. I mulch my containers. So that also helps with reducing the watering. But I do have a few evergreens in mind. So I still have evergreens in front of my HVAC for my neighbors to say, oh, look at that. Dress it up at the holidays, make it pretty.
Yeah, I do the same as far as mulching the containers and usually putting a small shrub or a perennial in there as a backbone plant and then filling around it with annuals each season.
Just as we've been taught.
And so for the utility boxes you mentioned, so that could be a cable access or something on the corner that there's an easement on your property. In our area, they're generally a pale green. So they're pretty innocuous, I think, if they're sitting amongst a lawn area or something. So they're not too bad. Occasionally, I've seen them painted really nicely. Like somebody has come and a community might have a campaign for artists to adopt their local utility box. So I've seen them, one near me, right on the DC Maryland border, has a beautiful monarch painted on it.
Ooh.
And every time I'm like, I never noticed that utility box before, but in the last year or two, every time I go by and see that monarch, I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful use of a utility box.
That is. And like everything else, you have to understand that professional tradesmen are going to need to get into that box. And so you want to choose a plant that's evergreen but soft and easy to work around, and you don't want to hurt anybody. So I go to bayberry, and Don's dwarf is one I've used in the past because I was the director of horticulture at Maymont for 38 years. And Don's dwarf bayberry really grows to about 5 feet high, 6 feet high, about 4 feet wide. And it's forgiving in that if it gets broken by maybe the serviceman or woman who hits it and it breaks, it grows right back very quickly. Such a forgiving plant. Plus, it has a nice experience as you brush by it. But that's a good one. It can take shade, it can take sun, it can take low areas as well as high and dry. But if you've got some, I'll say, more particular situation where it's really very wet and moist or it's really shady, then you want to get into like the inkberry hollies or the alyssiums, the anise trees. And again, these are broadleaf evergreens. I like the inkberry nigra. It grows to 8 feet tall given some time. And again, it's one that forgives. It moves with the person. You won't get scratched or, they won't get hurt. And alyssiums too. I used that to hide a bobcat exhibit once. And again, it's I'll say a middle of the road shrub, easy to prune, easy to manage, and just perfect for a super shady area, which sometimes those utility boxes are in. And you do a kind of arc around it. You don't just plant one. You make a kind of an arc and try to have it blend in with your landscape. So it's not just plunked in front of the utility box, hoping that one little plant's going to do the work of four.
Yeah, and I almost think it calls more attention to it when you do that, when you just have like the one little topiary plot next to the little box, and you're like, well, I thought it was going to cover it, but maybe in 15 years it will.
Exactly. These broadleaf evergreens will definitely make a nice, display. And it gets to the point that people, their eye will just brush right by it and go to your landscape, because we all know that's gorgeous and beautiful and flowering and just a wonderful focal point. And that utility box screen just will blend right in as just something green to run by, not going to draw attention.
So not the place for your pyracantha.
No.
or your raspberries. So nothing scratchy and mean. You do want to have your cable and internet working.
Yes.
And serviced, and obviously something that you said has flexibility to it, that if it does break, it's not going to ruin the whole plant. So not the place maybe for a rhododendron or something.
No, not at all. Plus also not the place for something that's like has chartreuse leaves. You want it to just visually go away. That's what you're trying to do. It's just have it blend.
A nice dark foliage plant. So next we were talking about sheds and buildings. And you were saying everybody has their shed story. And what it brought to mind to me, Peggy, were outhouses. Talking about sheds and buildings. And I was like, remember the old days when people had specific outhouse plants? I was reading some really old vintage garden journals, from 1880s and stuff, and they talked about hollyhocks and sunflowers, so they were like really tall annuals were considered outhouse plants. And I think things with scent, like bee balm was another one. I was trying to remember what the other categories of outhouse type plants, but what's your shed or building story?
Well, mine is, I was at Kew Gardens a number of years ago, and I was walking around. I was with a group of friends, and they went one way, and I went to Kew. I mean, who wouldn't go to Kew when you're sitting right there, And I'm walking around, and being a person who managed 100 acres their whole career, I'm always looking for where's the maintenance shop? Where is what I call the central point of this property? And I could never find it. And then I realized that there were these cusps and groupings evergreens randomly placed throughout the property. And I'm going, oh my, they've so skillfully hid all of their maintenance, buildings and their little satellite sheds and areas where maybe they needed to park something extra, compost or mulch or something. And I was so impressed that they could hide it so well. And then I got a map and I started looking at the roads, and I can go, that road leads to that road leads to that. But it was wonderfully, I'll say, inspiring to me to go back to Maymont and say, okay, how can I hide more? What can I use to hide more things? And I did. I reached out, and like you, with your experience with the outhouse, I went to fragrant plants, because if I was going to hide something, I wanted to have some sort of enjoyment from it. And so I reached for the osmanthus. I love, Fortune's osmanthus, and then osmanthus fragrans, and these are the tea olives, and they bloom in the fall. So they bloom with this super aromatic, sweet fragrance at a time that everything else is kind of winding down. And the evergreen leaves are very spiny, much like a holly, but they're opposite rather than alternate on the stem. So the deer leave these plants alone. Actually, I have them growing here in my yard because the deer leave them alone. But they get big and broad. And I had great success hiding many things with the osmanthus because they only get about 10, 15 feet tall and they grow fairly fast. It's not something that is going to outgrow the building to 30 feet. Don't do overkill. Do a little research and get the plant to the height you need it to be. You don't need to throw a shadow on these. And the other thing is I do and did prune, I'll say a good 18-inch corridor around the back of the plant to make sure I had good air circulation around the building. We don't want it brushing up against the building and hampering any opportunity for the moisture to be caught against that building. So that's my story. I was just so impressed the way Q did it. It inspired me. So if Q can do it, we can do it. That's my attitude.
Definitely. Yeah, and I've been always amazed at some of the clever ways public gardens I visited have hidden that garden work area. Occasionally I've stumbled across it, being nosy and walking to the back. The National Gallery of Art here in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, I for decades, never knew that there was a little side landscape yard. If you just look at that building from the top, from the bottom, from the side, I would never have known it was disguised in there. And it's just like a little half wall, go around a corner and bam, I found the utility carts, found where they were weeding. I was like, this is where it's tucked in. So very well disguised.
Oh, that's great. You see, you just have to be a little nosy and you can find things. But it's also fun. The plants they use to hide things with, be very, very discreet with it. So
yeah, I've seen usually a row of magnolias does a good job here. So we're talking the big magnolias, not the little girl magnolias.
Yeah, but there's some new magnolias out that, teddy bear is one. Have you heard of that one?
Yep.
I love that plant.
That's a great choice. Yeah, especially for a small single family home that's not a 30-foot or plus large public garden visitor center, or that you're hiding something behind. Then when you want a wall of big magnolias and you'd have the space for it.
Yes.
So I was also thinking about another garden I was at. They used, it might be Atlanta Botanical Garden. They used a curving long wall, kind of, I think, 10 feet high, of herbs, like it was a green wall of herbs. And then behind that is the kitchen, garden, and teaching classroom. So you just came around that kind of curve to that. So I thought that green wall is a great way of screening an area and also making it feel enclosed, like that kitchen classroom does. It was an outdoor kitchen classroom. So that's a great wall if you can have a living wall. Too many times, Peggy, I've seen these kind of stapled on, I'm going to say, English ivy faux plastic vines stapled onto a trellis and then put on some type of stand. And those are used often, I'll see, for an outdoor restaurant area, screening the back of the restaurant area from the back alley. Nobody wants to look at the back alley.
No.
So they might have attempted at one point, I'm going to guess some of these might have attempted real plants or trying to plant real English ivy up this trellis, but then somebody decided they need immediate screening. So it's usually faux. So some type of faux vine. And I love it, Peggy, even more, love it being sarcastic, when it's some type of tropical plant. That you're like, that doesn't grow here. And when you get closer, it's, faded flowers, or it doesn't look right, I'll just say.
Yes. I love green walls. When I was in Japan at the airport in Tokyo, it is all green walls. The planters that the trees are in the courtyard, they're about 4 feet tall, and there's green growth. There's all sorts of ferns and perennials growing on the walls of those planters. As you're going up the escalator, there's a whole beautiful biophilic display of nothing but green plants, a whole variety of ferns and all evergreen perennials, heucheras and geraniums, all sorts of things there growing and blooming. It was so beautiful. And we come to the United States and it's concrete and it's bland. And, so we need to step it up a little, folks, and think about, these things are happening throughout the entire world. We can hide things with a little bit of fencing and ingenuity, as well as with some If you can't grow something for real, you just have to take the time and maybe get some fake moss. Please don't get anything plastic, but get some moss that's been killed and dyed and different colors, and have artistic fun if you don't have the time. Or a living green wall, as the example with Atlantic Botanic Garden. I've seen pictures of that. They're just beautiful, and they're not hard to take care of if you set up the irrigation properly.
Yeah, and I would say, Longwood Gardens has one of the most famous green walls around its public bathroom area. And so it's not just disguising the public bathroom area, it's dressing it up and making it a feature you actually want to go and visit.
Oh, cool. No, I haven't been to Longwood in a few years. I've got to get back up there soon and see that.
That's an amazing green wall. And everybody that goes back there, and you're like, whether you need the necessary or not, you want to see that green wall area. But it does remind me also the Longwoods back area, which I've been invited to and see the back greenhouses and growing area. It's kind of down a hill. So that does make me think about using the landscape to hide things. So a berm, a hill, you're on the flat part. It might be below you and you never even knew it was there off to the side, but down a hill.
Exactly. And you can use lower plantings. You don't always have to use super high plantings. Use that landscape change, the topography change to your advantage to be able to just hide that little bit of view that you need. Maybe you need a shorter shrub. There's so many good plants out there that people don't even think about. And, shade versus sun, there's good opportunities. I find most people have challenges finding plants for the shade. It's pretty easy to find plants for the sun. But even rosemary, some cultivars of rosemary get to be 3 to 4 feet tall. And talk about an aromatic screen, that's evergreen in zone 7. So, but in the shade, reach to those rhododendrons, reach to the camellias, reach to your plants that you really enjoy. Even the skip laurel has an opportunity to really look fantastic in the shade. We were at a national park over the summer walking through it, and they had used skip laurel to hide their necessary. And it was up in New York, and it was beautiful. I was like, wow, that's a great use for that plant. It's not my favorite plant. It's kind of overused. Well, it is overused, but they had used it in a really creative way. And I'm also going to say we need to step away from plants that we've always reached for, the privets and the nandinas, the maidenhair grass, the miscanthus. These are plants that are on our invasive species list here in Virginia. And we need to step away. The English ivy, the vincas, all of these that we would be normally reaching for to grow up a fence or to hide something with. But we need to, I'll say, pivot a little more.
Or think outside. Things. Yeah. That's a great point, obviously, to check that local invasives list for your region and not be introducing more of that.
Yes.
And so I was looking at some parking areas that I've photographed in the past, especially at public gardens. And I think a lot of public gardens and museums and others do a great job of dressing up their parking areas and making them sometimes a destination garden. But what's your advice for parking areas?
Well, with parking areas, I had to design a parking area, and the first thought was safety. Having evening events, it's a lit parking lot. People want to come out of their experience. They're all excited and happy and joyful talking about it, and they're going to hit this parking lot, and they want to make sure that they can see around, they can feel the safety, they can sort of scan the layout of the land. And so the plant choices you make really have to be careful, and the situation of where you site them has to be careful. So around the perimeters of these parking areas, you can go with American hollies, you can go with some of your cherry laurels, and you can go with a lot of arborvitaes to sort of create a wall so people don't need to look into it. But in the parking area itself, you need to make sure that you are planting more deciduous plants, particularly in the wintertime, plants you can limb up that people can see under and not feel threatened by a dark shadow or something. Lighting is so critical, and I could go on and on about lighting. We had Dr. Kelsey Johnson on the show this past year, and she talked about dark skies and the importance of raising awareness that our lighting is so bright and its impact on our wildlife, particularly migrating birds, and our nocturnal, pollinators, which we don't think about. But yet lighting, if it's too bright, creates a dark curtain where you really, that change of a bright light to darkness is stark. It's where if you lower the lighting to lower lumens, like into the 1800 level, you still have plenty of light to see, but you've taken away that dark curtain. And so you want the plant to not also provide another dark curtain. Parking lots are tricky. They're very tricky. All the considerations of space and safety and lighting so that people can feel comfortable coming and going from the venue with ease.
Especially if there's a change in grade or a change in path type, like you're going from gravel to slate or something like that. So you want to mark those or uplight them or downlight them where appropriate.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
In the book The Urban Garden by Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate, you'll find dozens of inspiring and creative ways to grow flowers, shrubs, vegetables, herbs, and other plants in small spaces and with a limited budget. Whether you want to grow on a balcony, rooftop, front stoop, or a tiny urban patio, turn your growing dreams into reality and build a gorgeous and unique garden that showcases your personal style while still being functional and productive. With the genius ideas and resourceful tactics found here, you'll be maximizing yields and beauty from every square inch of your space. No matter what you grow, the 101 amazing growing ideas found in the urban garden will turn your tiny urban yard into a treasure trove of green you'll be proud to share with family and friends. Buy your copy today at your local retail bookseller or order it online now at Amazon.com or bookshop.org.
The next area I was thinking about is, since I'm in a very urban area, is reducing your noise and also the wind. So, we can disguise views, but we can also protect ourselves in the elements by introducing plants in certain locations.
Yes, and here on the East Coast, our winds generally come from the northwest. So if at my house, I have planted a screen of evergreens in the northwest corner. It's out from my house, but it creates a wind block so that as that wind comes across, it's actually pushed around my house. And it's made a tremendous difference, particularly with some of these super cold winds we've had lately. And so this is one of the ways of you can save energy, but using, good green giant arborvitaes. I mean, I hate to use those plants. They're so common, but they're so fast growing. But also using some of our native junipers. We have a lot of Juniperus virginiana cultivars out there. And a absolute favorite of mine is Emerald Sentinel. It's also called Emerald Feather. It's a beautiful bluish juniper with gorgeous blue berries every single year. And it gets to be about 10 feet wide, so it doesn't take a lot of space. And it gets to be about 30 feet high, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's a juniper, unlike the arborvitae, which just shoots right up super fast. But I grew those to hide a concrete wall, 30-foot concrete wall, and they did their job. But it's a lovely plant. It's not one that is commonly used, but needs to be considered more. And then another is the cultivar Taylor. Again, infusing our native plants into our landscapes wherever we can. And Taylor only gets to be about 20 feet tall. But these plants, staggered in a zigzag formation in an arc, you don't want to plant a line, that's boring, will give you that windbreak that you need. The wind will hit it and push it around. If you planted a straight line, the wind's going to hit it like a wall. And you want that wind to move around it.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Shrubs and Hedges, an episode we did with Eva Monheim, and talking also about layering with different varieties of plants. So instead of having that straight line of arborvitae, lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then number 5 dies, number 6, 7, 8. So it's always one in the middle, right? It's never one on either end. That if you layer different types of shrubs, some could be deciduous, some could be evergreen.
Yeah.
And had them kind of like in a border area that can help with privacy, that can help with the wind, and help with noise pollution.
Yes, because at my house, I used this evergreen wall, and I planted my deciduous hollies, my winterberry and my possum haw hollies in front of it. So now I have a green backdrop for my red berries in the wintertime. When all the leaves have fallen, I can have this gorgeous kind of contrast of the green and the red. Christmas at my house from fall to winter. No. I mean, use that evergreen backdrop as an opportunity to showcase some plants that, like even a witch hazel, that yellow flower is so delicate and so fine. But if you put it in front of a super evergreen backdrop, you'll be able to see it more. It'll pop because of the contrast. So use it to your opportunity. Have fun with it and expand it. But understand it's that northwest side. And you can say, well, Peggy, sometimes the wind comes from the south. Yeah, it does. You can plant some deciduous plants in the south to also help shade your house in the summertime. That'll block the wind a little, slow it a little in the wintertime. But it's from the northwest, like the storm we just experienced.
Yes, definitely. So that's a little bit about privacy. But I was also thinking about, say you have a neighbor, I'm not going to name names, but just say you have a neighbor who parks his orange pickup truck right next to your property line, where you have a line of, say, cherry red shrubs or, berrying plants. Maybe not the best color combination there.
No. Well, sometimes if you don't have a lot of space, reaching for a fence does help, and sometimes you can also, and not put a plant on it, but to give a backdrop to your plants that are in that really bright red color, or you can get very narrow plants. And in the horticulture industry, there's go to arborvitae, our native arborvitae, Holstrom, which is very narrow. It's 2.5 feet wide, but grows 10 feet high. Or that you can pick even one that gets 3 feet wide, Kelsoki. These are tall, tight spires that are meant for short, for narrow areas, but that can grow up and very vertically and nice and neat and tidy to block just about anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, Peggy, that I've seen too many people go for the quick filling running bamboo, which we know is a big no-no these days. But the reason so many people did that back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, into the 70s, why they planted that line of running bamboo was because they wanted a quick fencing, a quick screening between them and their neighbors for whatever reason. And maybe they weren't allowed to plant, or not plant, but install a fence that was a certain height. So that's the other reason they went with that bamboo as a solution.
Yeah, but we do have so many plants that grow super narrow. And if not, you can get really creative and start pruning a plant to kind of lattice, together and create that wall of live greenery. You can do it with magnolia, you can do it with camellias, you can do it with so many plants, even fruit trees. And the way you can prune them is to have them be basically flat, flat on one side and flat on the other, but you're weaving these branches together like a lattice work. A friend of mine went to the Netherlands, and she was amazed that the street trees, when you looked straight on from the street toward the storefront, the beautiful rounded trees. But when you got to the sidewalk, you realized that they were maybe about 5 feet wide down the street. And they had been pruned that way their entire life to be able to not have the branches growing into the storefront, not have branches growing over the street. And she was just amazed. She's like, gosh, taking a quick look around, they were normal trees, nice and rounded. But then walking down the street, I didn't have branches in my eyes.
Yeah, so, I've seen some really nice espalier examples. It can get expensive, Peggy.
Yeah, it can.
It is DIY if you want to, and prune your own and do your own topiary. It's going to take a few years, but that's a great project to get started on.
Yeah, something for the gardener who wants the challenge. And you can go with some fast-growing plants. You can do it with bayberry. It's just going to be a lot more maintenance in the long run because that fast-growing plant is going to want to keep growing.
I was thinking of like with willows.
Yes,
might be a fun one to try out. Just like a short willow fence woven together, just out of living willow instead of dead pieces.
Yes, because some of that wattle fencing, and people even, I'm one of them too. Many years ago, I wanted a bamboo fence, and of course at Maymont there's bamboo, so I had endless supply. It was very tedious to put together, but then it only lasted 2 years in these elements because of our humidity here in the mid-Atlantic. I was so disappointed. Let's put it, I did not get a return on my investment of time.
Yeah, I think some of those Asian style cut bamboo fencing looks so gorgeous, but you don't realize it is kind of ephemeral. It's not going to last forever.
No, it's not. But yeah, so many good things. The other one, though, that's when you're in an urban area are utility poles. My neighbor, we have one in the corner. She nestled many years ago a whole planting of tall deciduous trees, shorter trees, and then she interspersed some evergreen shrubs. She actually made it just literally visually disappear. Working with her landscape designer, of course. But I mean, you would think, wow, that makes a big thing out of nothing. But using the varying heights of plants, I look at the tree first. I forget that the utility pole is tucked in there. And as the tree was growing, yes, it had some pruning done by the tree company, but it was artfully, it's a 10-foot buffer that you have to have for the lines, 10 feet from the line out to a plant, a growth of any type of plant or structure they would prefer when you're putting up a shed, because they have that right of way for 10 feet out. Okay. And she had placed the tree so that it was barely within, hitting that 10-foot, easement. And then underneath it, she had placed a lot of other evergreens, and it just went away. It goes away. It's beautiful. I mean, that's a lot of planting to hide one pole. I've seen, but it's not just plunking a plant in front of it and hoping it'll do the job. It's nesting plants around it and kind of having the plants become the focal point rather than the pole. Understanding all the time that 10-foot easement on both sides. So
that's a great point.
That.
Yeah, I think, Peggy, I think that's a really good solution for a lot of what we would consider unsightly or ugly landscape features, is to make something beautiful that attracts the eye away from it. So maybe you can't do anything about XYZ over here and you just have to live with it. You have to live with that orange pickup truck, but I'm going to make ABC over here so gorgeous that you don't even notice that is over there.
Yes, years ago, golly, I should say decades ago, Beth Chatto, who is a famous horticulturalist, and she's since, of course, passed away. I had the opportunity to not only hear her speak, but I invited her back to Maymont to walk around and see the gardens. And here I am just gobsmacked. I'm starstruck with this, having Beth Chatto walking around my gardens. And I asked her, I said, here's this public garden. My biggest challenge is trying to keep everything looking good all the time. And she said, oh, no, Peggy. No. When you have something that doesn't look so nice on one side of the path, you put something on the other side of the path that is just gorgeous. And then each eye goes to the gorgeous side of the path when it's supposed to. And I was like, wow. Says we all can't be beautiful all the time. So she said, she's telling me about focal points in a very sweet. She had a very high pitched voice, and she's so sweet.
Yeah,
and
I would
so
say
kind.
That's so true, especially in small space gardens where you only have a little bit, that you really have to pull the eye to the best features.
Yes.
So it could be running water and a little tabletop fountain. It could be some gorgeous containers with annuals, but pulling that eye to where you want it to be, much like you would with dressing in an outfit.
Exactly.
Putting on earrings and lipstick, to attract attention there, away from, a widening waistline.
Particularly this time of year. But I think I always tell people to really squint your eyes and run it over your landscape every season. And I say squint, and what jumps out? What are your focal points? What is your eye being drawn to? And then say, is that really where I want it to go? And if not, then buy some, put some plants in. I had a friend buy this beautiful Italian style mosaic table, and she put it out on her terrace. That's what you see when you go onto the terrace. All of her plantings, she had this collection. She just wanted plain green and white plants all around her terrace. And that table just popped it. It was bland until she put the table in. She created a focal point out of her using a table, using furniture. But we can create focal points with, many, as you had said earlier, containers and different types of plants, be they bold leaves or very, uniquely pruned, or even, unique bark, or unique containers, or just some fun artwork even. Artwork is great. So, yeah, but look at your yard each season and say, what do I see and what don't I want to see? And then you've got your goals.
Yeah, I think garden art is also a great solution for pulling the eye and highlighting some features. And if you want to invest in some things, and we did talk about, painting that utility box if it's allowed, but that can also disguise other things like that shed we talked about, or that outhouse. If you paint it to recede, or because it doesn't recede, you make it a focal point, paint it bright pink if you want to.
Absolutely. And when we say recede, if you notice, public places use gray a lot, and because gray just disappears in the landscape. It doesn't pop out. And if you want to have a shed disappear, paint it all gray. Don't paint it gray and put white, shutters and white door and white trim on it. Just paint the whole thing gray, and you will find it will just visually disappear. The other thing is, I had a neighbor who brought his boat home, and he parked it in the yard. Massive boat, beautiful boat, and lots of joy on that boat. But then he bought one big mother of a blue tarp, and it was like, oh my golly. So I was the kind neighbor that Christmas who bought him a gray tarp. And we took off the blue tarp, we put on the gray tarp, and the boat just visually disappeared. I mean, he had to have it home. It was too big to kind of hide quickly, but just changing the tarp color from blue to gray changed, and just poof, it went away. And he was amazed. He was like, wow, Peggy, I didn't believe you. Thank you. And then he paid me for the tarp. Anyway.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's a great tip. And I was like, why do they sell these giant tarps in these bright blue?
Yeah, me too.
Why this Grover blue color, not like a sky blue or a deep blue? But yeah, why is it manufactured in that? But yeah,
yes.
Must be some type of safety feature, like similar to orange construction fencing. There's a reason it's orange.
Yes.
It's not to be unsightly. It's to be seen for safety reasons. But yeah, maybe the blue tarp, somebody could answer that question for us and dive into that.
Maybe.
And then invest maybe a little bit more in gray taupey tarps out there.
Yep. Yes. And the thing is, even camouflage pops out. I mean, gray disappears. Those tarps are a godsend. You can hide a lot of things with those.
Speaking of camouflage, I have seen people put those kind of camouflage tarps over something in their landscape that they wanted to, temporarily hide. It might be, a barbecue sitting out there, a bright barbecue set or something, and they'll just kind of throw a tarp over that. It works for a quick cover up for an event or something. Yes. But if you want something a little bit more permanent, then find a place that you can tuck that barbecue set into.
Exactly. I mean, we tucked ours under our cedar tree. Cedar trees, the way they grow, they're mature and it grows to the ground. Nobody limbed it up, thankfully, in the past years who have owned this house. And so we took out all the dead wood on the inside and created a space that we can hide things. Is it a true, solid wall of greenery hiding it? No, it's opaque. You can see a little bit here and there, but we're also very aware. I mean, I don't put yellow buckets underneath there and blue buckets under there. But we have hidden so many of our garden supplies under that cedar tree, and it works. So get creative about the plants in your property. Where can you hide some things if you're short, limited with space? And be a little creative. I don't need to build another garden shed. I use my cedar tree. And I've got all my fence wire and things sitting on the branches against the trunk, and I use it enough that the tree's not growing into anything. We're not going to end up with a roll of fence wire sticking out of a tree 10 years from now. But, and it's very convenient because it's a nice height, some of these branches. So I'm not bending over too much. But yes, think about other ways in your property. You can stash some things that you don't use very often. And you could take it out, use it, and then just put it back. And save on your neighbors' views into your yard and kind of have just a little joy knowing that you're doing your best to make everything just a little happier for those that live around you. And good plant choices are some of them. And also just being creative with some structures, and as we have talked about. So, I mean, it's kind of fun to get creative in that regard.
Yeah, and in the book, The Urban Garden, that I co-wrote, we do talk about some of the ways in a small garden to disguise or tuck away some of those garden tools and necessities. But at some point you just run out of space or you just have too much of something. And then that's when we encourage, I think in the book, and I always encourage in talks I give, to make a collection to display it. You could line up whatever that is. And as long as it looks intentional, then you can have it out there for display.
Yes. And if they're tools, you just need to put a little coat of oil on them to protect them. That's all. And you'll be fine. But yes, tools can be fun to look at, and they can be conversation starters too. I got some cool tools for Christmas, and I've been having fun talking about them. We can't have everything tucked away all of the time. I have in my backyard a very ugly box, and I've done my best to hide it, truly. But this time of year, you see it, and people come over and go, "What's that?" And I just make it a conversation piece. And then come the end of March, it'll all be hidden again with everything that I've got out there growing around it. Sometimes you just have to do the best you can with what you have, but knowing you're trying your very best. So, it's good to have some good ideas, though, to fall back on.
Well, thank you so much, Peggy. There's been some great inspiration. And as you said, do what we can. You can't hide everything all the time, all at once. But
right. Yes.
We can adapt some of those ideas, some of those tricks, maybe tuck things away and experiment with different ways we can do it. And then pick up from garden tours we go to, from public gardens we visit. Look at the ways that they are doing that. Because, I was thinking about another public garden that I love, the Denver Botanic Garden. It is really squeezed in an urban area, and it's got an apartment building looking down straight into it. There is, a way that they have done the landscape and cleverly enclosed it that you don't feel like you're being looked down from the rest of the city. You really feel like you're in this oasis out, in a garden out in the country. You would never know. So I would say think about some of your favorite public gardens, like you said, Kew and others, and take some of those ideas and modify them for yourself.
Yes, definitely. And even up north, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, it has 12 entrances. There's no backyard to that garden. Think about that. So, just think and be a little creative and share some ideas with friends and have fun with it. Gardening is all about having fun. It's an area that we can share and learn and express ourselves with, and in a very fun way. And if we choose the right plants, we can also help enrich our environment. So get lots of good vibes out of it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. Always a pleasure.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
Get low-maintenance alternatives to lawns with Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz. Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of their lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also they're a literal vampire. And suddenly my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Alyssium plant profile. Star anise, Alyssium species, is an evergreen shrub or small tree. It has fragrant flowers that turn into attractive seed pods. The crushed leaves and stems give off a spicy scent. It's also known commonly as anise tree. Note that all parts of this plant are toxic to humans. Only the seed pods of the Chinese star anise, Alyssium verum, are used in teas and as a spice. Because of its toxicity and that it's highly fragrant, it is also deer-resistant. Alyssium is native to parts of Asia, the southeastern United States, Central America, and the Caribbean. It's hardy to USDA zones 6 to 10. It can reach 10 feet high and 6 feet wide, depending on the species and cultivar. It's pollinated by small flies and beetles who are attracted to the flower's sometimes fetid scent. Alyssium also attracts bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. It grows best in part shade to full shade. Planted in medium to wet soils, it's a good choice for using in rain gardens. Propagate Alyssium by layering, stem cuttings, or seed. Popular cultivars include Shady Lady, Woodland Ruby, and Orion. Alyssium, you can grow that. What's new in the garden this week? Well, I'm enjoying my indoor garden this week, including some blooming African violets and cyclamen. In the garden tips that we shared on our social media this past week, we focused on dealing with snow and ice, including to occasionally walk your deer fencing and check for bending poles or sagging netting. Sometimes fallen branches or heavy snow can create a breach in the fence line. In local gardening events coming up that you might want to attend, there is still time to sign up for the Washington Gardener Seed Exchange on Saturday, February 7th, 2026, from 12:30 to 4 p.m. at Green Spring Gardens in Alexandria, Virginia. You can register through eventbrite.com or go to our website, washingtongardener.blogspot.com, for that registration link. And coming up February 12th and 13th in Linthicum Heights, Maryland, at the Maritime Institute is Chesapeake Green, or Chessie Green, as it's known within the industry. This is a 2-day event packed full of engaging and informative horticultural education, and I will be speaking there on ground covers, so I hope to see you there. You can register for that at MNLGA and look for the Chessie Green link. Next, on February 26th, is the first annual seminar of the Piedmont Landscape Association at the historic Paramount Theater in downtown Charlottesville, Virginia. They have many engaging programs and speakers, including Lincoln Smith, Forested Food Forests, Rebecca McMacken, lead horticulturist for the American Horticultural Society, and consulting arboretum curator for the Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, New York. They'll be offering continuing education credits for horticultural professionals, and you can learn more at piedmontlandscape.org. Happy gardening!
This is Christy Page with Green Prints with the last words on The Confessions of a Serial Seedling Killer by Pat Stone. They say every gardener should keep a detailed record book. I don't. If I did and anyone looked into it for the month of February and March, I'm afraid they'd title it The Confessions of a Serial Seedling Killer. I imagine the courtroom where I'd be put on trial, the jury a double six-pack of certified master gardeners, the prosecutor the author of Gardening for the Utterly Perfect. Isn't it true, Sir Perfect sneers, that you killed an entire tray of broccoli seedlings by over-fertilizing them? At least I was trying to feed them, I plea. Didn't you permanently stunt over 24 foxgloves by starting them in brick-hard garden soil instead of using professionally aerated planting mix? Just once, I say. that you actually roasted a flat of lettuce starts by leaving them in a closed, cold frame on a sunny day, that your straw flowers got lean for lack of light, that you didn't base heat your basil, that in all you neglected to follow the seed starter's credo, LSFT. Lucky Strikes means fine tobacco. Leafy starts make fine tomatoes. Tomatoes, at least they're in the same family. Silence, you horticultural hoodlum. I silence this fantasy before sentencing can be passed. All right, I sobbed to myself. It's true, I've knocked off some seedlings in my day, but who hasn't? I mean, let's be honest here. Indoor seed starting is not easy. Still, I'm getting better at it. I'm learning that LSMFT really means light, soil, moisture, fertilization, and temperature, and that I have to pay close attention to all five if I want my seedlings to thrive. But I'll tell you something else. Turning a breakfast table into a miniature hospital nursery where you sow packets of tiny brown seeds, where you spray and warm and fertilize and light, you do your best to turn little question mark shaped sprouts into green exclamation points of life, even flubbing up sometimes and having to put some of your offspring under the ground instead of in it. That's called caring, plain and simple. And that's what it really takes to make a garden, and a gardener, grow. This has been The Last Word by Christy Page at greenprints.com.
Thank you for listening to GardenDC. This episode was made by real humans. It was produced and hosted by myself, Kathy Jentz. The Let the Sunshine music interludes are by James Mulvaney. If you like this episode, you may also enjoy listening to GardenDC Podcast Episode 228, Reducing Runoff with Rain Gardens, Episode 235, Spring Pruning Tips, Episode 12, Shrubs and Hedges. You can become a listener supporter by going to the link in our show notes. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to WashingtonGardener.com or WashingtonGardener.blogspot.com. You can find Washington Gardener on Twitter or X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Pinterest at WDC Gardener, and on Facebook at Washington Gardener Magazine. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app. Please take a moment to share us on social media with hashtag GardenDC and with your gardening friends so other gardeners can find us too. So what was that clever disguise in the Raleigh garden I visited a few years ago? Well, the homeowner had placed a tall 3-panel mirror on the top of a knee-height stone wall. It reflected back the beauty of the shade garden that we stood in and completely blocked the view of those ugly utility poles and wires behind them. What a clever and wonderful solution.